You have to be open to slap. If you truly believe in the power of self-awareness, it has to be slapped. Sometimes we need to have that jolt of reality. If you take that moment of clarity for what it is, clarity, and run with it and use it, it can be life-changing.
I don't want to gloss over this because this is truly an issue. I think anyone in business celebrate the wins that you've experienced along the way.
If you spend any time in AI, it will tell you you're the most brilliant person in the world. These algorithms will give you what you can ask any question and it's going to give you an answer because it was told to in ones and zeros. A mentor, maybe not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear because they want to invest in you.
No one makes magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to Bippity Boppity Business.
When you think of mentorship, you probably don't think of Disney characters that come to mind the second I say that word. But I think maybe you should. Jiminy Cricket was a conscience who was that little voice that whispered truth into Pinocchio. Phil from Hercules, remember him, the little rascal guy, was a blunt yet frustrated little, godlike creature who at first was unsure of Hercules, but saw potential in the hero in Hercules before he even did. And then we have Rafiki, who I think is the most inspired character that I thought of when I decided to bring this guest on the show. Rafiki was a mysterious and disruptive force that really made Simba confront who he really is. And there was a moment where there was a little bit of a violent act in the scene, a bopping, or in our case, a slapping, if you will. Some mentors are gentle guides, some give us that tough love, and some hit you over the head with a stick and say, remember who you are. And today's episode is all about this concept of mentorship that really shakes you and changes you as a person. What Yogi Mueller calls the great slapping. It's those uncomfortable moments that wake us up to who we are meant to become. And essentially, we are going to explore throughout this episode those Disney characters and what mentorship really is, what we think mentorship is, or are those moments in our life just well-meaning chaos agents that are there to drive the plot forward? Well, today we're going to find out. And without further ado, let's bring on Yogi, our experienced leader of many years who's worked at Disney and more. I'll have his bio in the description to help us go through this journey together. So thank you so much, Yogi.
Hey.
It's so good to see you.
Hi, Rita. Fantastic. That was a great, I'm in the podcast, but I'm excited to listen to it just based on that introduction. So
excited. Here's celebratory confetti for you being here today. I really wanted to dive into before we dive into the book, this is the book here, by the way, for everyone who is interested in seeing it. A very Lion King-esque cover, if you didn't realize it. But I wanted to kind of talk to you first before we get into the book about if you could mentor your 25-year-old self today, what would you actually refuse to fix because the struggle was necessary? That point was necessary for you to become who you are today.
Boy, that's a fantastic question to start the interview off with. So
just a little aperitif, to get the conversation going.
I remember telling people, really my first real job was actually at Disney, and that was I was 29. I had gone through school, which some people call an $80,000 party with an $80,000 cover charge, and didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I was a musician. I was in a band. Didn't know if I was a professional comedian. Didn't know if I wanted to do that. And so I kind of explored for a while. I even considered for a brief moment joining the circus, and I wouldn't change anything for the world, right? Because you're absolutely right. That experience, that ups and downs, that $80,000 party, whatever it was, formed me who I am today. People ask me, what would you tell your 25-year-old self? Is you're a child, you know nothing,
Yeah.
and allow them to explore and to make those mistakes. And I didn't have really that concept of mentorship at that time. I had people that filled that role, but I didn't have a label for it. I didn't quite know what it was and what it really meant, but I wouldn't change anything for the world. But then again, my 75-year-old self would tell my 55-year-old self, you're a child, you know nothing. And so I would give my 55-year-old self the same advice: live life, walk through every door, and learn from all your mistakes.
I so resonate with that. Thank you for sharing, because at the end of the day, the main thing that I took away from the book was that life, just like a Disney character, is a journey. And we have to go through every single experience that we do in order to become that more developed character, business leader, person, whatever metaphor you want to use, to become who we are meant to be. I am sure there are people who are listening who are very confused on their journey, just like you were at 25, going on all the side quests, trying to figure out, should I join the circus? Should I be an entrepreneur? I don't know. And they need that mentorship. And I think your book really breaks open and breaks apart the importance of not just what mentorship is, but why we need it so badly now, especially today. So I just wanted us to kind of lean into the surprise of this episode, which is, I really do think Rafiki was right. The way that he helped Simba on his journey, he really gave him this wake up call, this slap that you talk about in the book. And we'll go into that for a second. That really just, so I'm going to show you the scene right now that I was playing over and over in my head as I was reading your book. So let's just watch that together just for a second. Are you ready?
For so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
So that great slapping was literally what you were talking about. And what I want to make sure of is, we're not saying, in the book you talked about multiple times, that we're not actually trying to slap people, okay, like Rafiki did.
No matter how
Like,
much they deserve it, it's
right.
not a physical slap. Yes.
You said that growth doesn't always come dressed in a hug. Sometimes it arrives as a slap. So talk me through, what is the great slapping and why do we resist it so much?
It's not so much the action of slapping, it's the reaction to slapping, the physical manifestation of what people feel when they get slapped.
Right.
And that is that moment of pain, that moment of just jarring reality, right? That ow. And then there's this clarity that comes after that. And sometimes we need to have that jolt of reality to help us see the clarity. And sometimes that jolt of reality stings, and it stings for a little bit. And if you fight the sting and get mad about it, well, then it's going to continue to hurt. You're going to be sore. But if you take that moment of clarity for what it is, clarity, and run with it and use it, it can be life-changing. So first of all, you have to be open to slap. I think I say in the book, nobody actively asks to be slapped.
Right.
But if you truly believe in the power of self-awareness, ask to be slapped and then use it, with that information. Make amazing changes in your life and be inspired.
The way that you describe those moments as the sharp clarity, it is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Why do we need that disruption to grow? Why doesn't ease produce transformation? Why does it have to be this moment in order for us to look within to change?
I think especially in these times, I think we are surrounded by rabbit holes. I mean, everywhere you go, there's a rabbit hole, whether it's a social media rabbit hole, whether it is a mindset rabbit hole, whatever it is. And I think even though that rabbit hole is sometimes uncomfortable because of just the frustration that it causes, there is a level of comfort in there because it's known frustration. And when you get into these mindsets, these tunnels, whatever you want to call it, it is very difficult to break out. And if
Like
it,
Alice in Wonderland, I'm getting that visual right now. Like you're
yeah,
stuck in all of these, whether external or internal rabbit holes that you feel lost and you don't know how to escape from it.
I work a lot with young people, college students and 30-year-olds. There is so much reflective negativity out there that really impacts people's self-worth, their self-image, their ability, their belief in their own ability, their belief in their potential. And to be able to reach into that rabbit hole and grab somebody by the back of the collar and pull them out and go, you're better than this. You're destined for something great. You got to get out of that hole. And that jarring reality of a slap may be the thing that's necessary to do that.
You shared an early career moment when your boss, I believe it was George, kept calling you out. He was very blunt and you were concerned about, like, does this guy just not like me? Like, why does he keep calling me out like this? And you shared a moment that you learned from that experience that his bluntness really wasn't about nitpicking. It was that belief in your potential. So for that young person or just person in their career in general who is maybe stuck in those rabbit holes, how can someone tell the difference between criticism that's driven by an ego from a leader versus that belief and constructive feedback to recognize, oh, this person is really just trying to help me?
That is a very individual question for the individuals. I don't know if there's a shotgun approach to that answer, because the decision whether something is investment or something is being, you're being torn down, a lot of times is how the person is receiving that information. And so one person's mean is another person's mentor. And that comes in a lot of areas. How self-aware are you, whether you see the truth in all feedback. So if the person's being mean and just busting on you, there's a reason they're doing it. And if you understand what that reason is and you learn from that and you make changes in your approach or your life or whatever it is to overcome it, then it is an investment in you. It might not be the way you see it or the way you feel in the moment. But I think the bottom point comes to trust. And I say that the mentorship really has two foundational pieces. One is the trust that must exist between the two people. And the other one is the willingness to be in that relationship.
I think you talked about like the 50 to 51% formula relationship where it's like that mentee has to be 51% in versus you. Yeah, let's dive into that to clarify it further.
Yeah, so Rafiki didn't chase Simba down. He waited for Simba to come back.
Yeah.
And that's the mentorship, is the mentor is only as invested in as the mentee is invested in it, but the mentee needs to bring 51% of that game. And I think if you are getting feedback from somebody that you feel is beating you down, address it, call them out, find out what's going on. And you might get that, what I've called a life-changing comment from George, who I call my hero, is because I expect more in you. You're capable of so much more. And that line changed my life. It turned me from being an operator that I wanted to be an operator to somebody that I wanted to help unlock that in other people. So again, that trust and then that willingness to come to that table are two things to help you decide where that person fits.
And now from the mentor perspective, how does a mentor deliver the feedback, the slap, the radical candor, whatever you want to call it, without destroying that trust that is so important? So let's talk through that a little bit.
I think, and I just had this conversation with my students a couple of weeks ago, it's that balance. Because if I'm telling you, hey, you're screwing up, but I don't tell you why I'm saying that, and where is the ROI? Where is the person you could be? I love the phrase, mentors are not satisfied with who you are right now because they can see who you could be, right? And if I said, Rita, man, I got to tell you, what you did the other day, no bueno. I mean, it killed your brand. It did this, it did that. But here's why I'm telling it to you. Because Rita, you're an amazingly talented young woman. You have potential coming out of your pinky that most people will not even realize in their entire life. And I said, if you just understand that power, if you just understand how to harness it, how to get to that and unlock it, you could also change lives. But there's things that we need to got to work through. And I'm here to help you get there. But you got to start and you got to fix these things that are pretty glaring. And so what that does is it opens up that potential. And that person might be in that rabbit hole of not even understanding. They're either unwilling or unable to see their full potential. And that's your first reach into that rabbit hole to grab them, to let them know that there's life outside of it.
I also thought that it was really cool the way that you talked about George. Even when the delivery was intentional in that way, he talked about how, you know, just to roughly paraphrase, like there was a certain area that wasn't clean in the park and you were trying to mentoring your team to be better. And he said, celebrate the promenade. It's spotless. So in spite of all of the circumstances, there was still something to acknowledge that was great in the midst of the things that needed to be improved. So how important is it to also acknowledging wins while you're delivering those hard truths, kind of like you did just now?
Oh, huge. And a funny story, that situation happened prior to that life-changing comment that he made. In the moment, I didn't realize what he was doing. And it wasn't until after I got slapped and the clarity set in, I'm like, damn, he was being very, very helpful to me because I was not celebrating my wins. If I celebrated a win, I was already 3 steps behind and worrying why I haven't accomplished the next thing. What it was also doing was I was transferring that to my team because I was hard on myself, not celebrating my wins. Even though I thought I was, I most likely wasn't. And so he was shaking me hard. And here's this guy that's always tough on me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to be doing this and blah, 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 blah. He goes, hey, just look around you. Take a moment and realize how far you've come. And then when I look back, that was awesome feedback. And I have shared that to folks that I mentor right now. It was life-changing. But in the moment, I just saw it as another potential beatdown and not what it was a big investment in who I could be.
I don't want to gloss over this because this is truly an issue. I think anyone in business, whether you're the mentor, the mentee, an entrepreneur, a top rock star performer on your team, especially now with the amount of pressure there is to perform and look and act a certain way, the inability to celebrate the wins that you've experienced along the way is it's really hard right now because even, I think of people who work in social media or in content, right? It's always about what's next, what's next, what's next. And it can be hard to just sit there and go, okay, well, I'm still growing, but I'm still doing well as I succeed. Like, I really think this idea of perfectionism at all costs is very predominant now. What do you think about that? Are you seeing that with the people that you've worked with or you mentor?
I think that's a great comment. We talk about the rabbit hole of likes, social likes. A lot of people's self-worth is based on how many likes that they get on this one thing they put on social media. And all of the reinforcement, all of the accolades that they get is external and they seek for it externally. And they almost lose sight of the importance of internal validation. Your self-worth is based on how many people approve you. And so I've dealt with a lot and this is not just recently, in the last 20, 30 years, I've been in the teaching business. We have students that don't understand that their opinion matters in terms of their self-worth. And you got to dig at that. You got to get back there because if it's not a blue thumbprint or a heart that gets lit up around them, they don't feel that they have anything to contribute.
It's so concerning to me, even as someone who's in business that makes content, to consider that I could make a great piece of content with somebody and 2 people watch. And now all of a sudden I'm like, well, was it worth it? Right. There's this transactional element and this instantaneous regret of gratification and reward that I'm seeing. I think people need to just step back and be excited about just the journey and be grateful and spend time to just be in the moment and focus on the long game. So if you are working with someone who is in that rabbit hole, but feels like they're ready to step out. You talk about mentors seeing untapped potential even when the mentee doesn't see it. It's exhilarating, but it's also terrifying. How do you know when someone is truly ready to go on that journey to receive mentorship versus, not, I guess?
No, great question. And again, anytime investment, even if it's in the stock market, you see something that's good, you see something that has potential and you invest in it, doesn't always pay off. And that's the reality of investment, right? That's the reality of that. But you see all of the data, all the performance stuff you get from Wall Street. Well, you sort of get that in people as well, where you see spark. I call it a spark, where you see just that je ne sais quoi, that certain something in somebody where they vibrate at a different frequency of those that are around them or in similar situations. And I had a student who, there are a few people that you come in contact with and where they walk into the room and the room is just different that they're in it. That they
Yes.
can walk in without saying a word, but the room is different and people respond to them. And I'm talking to this guy and I'm like, look, I don't know if you realize this, but you have an incredible power about you. I said, you could touch things and they will immediately turn to gold. Great guy, great integrity, young, dynamic, just the whole package. And I mean, he's 19. I'd vote for him for president, but he's not there yet. He hasn't had enough life experience to truly understand what all of this means or could mean in him. So I'm starting to poke at him a little bit. I'm like, and we had a conversation where he didn't know people's names.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, bless your heart. I sat him down like, look, read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I have it right over here in my book. Know people's names. Take a little bit of effort to know that. And that just multiplies your dynamic by 500%.
Yes.
And it's those little things like that I eventually, again, happiness is planting a seed of a tree whose shade you will never enjoy, that he might catch on one day and get to a point where it's like, yeah, I see it now. And I'm going to use it for good. With great power comes great responsibility.
I love that. We had to throw that in for sure. But I do think
Now that Disney owns Marvel, we can say that, right?
And, anything goes in the multiverse of this podcast. So I let it fly. But I do believe that what you are mentioning is it takes great awareness to notice when the mentee might be ready to be mentored. But it also, if they are ready, something I was reading through the book that was really kind of resonating with me, which is it really is a fine line to be a mentor, to be somebody's, like, the difference between being somebody's boss, therapist, parent, the line is so thin between those things. And from my personal experience, I'm working on this. I am trying to better develop this line because of the hero complex a little bit that you touched on in the book. Because I just want to help people, right? I want to go in and I want to fix their problems and I just want it to be okay. And I want to listen to everything that's going on in their life. And you talk about mentors actually just exist to guide, not to really become like a surrogate supervisor in a way. Right. So if you're somebody's boss, how can you truly even be their mentor? What's that line?
So I have former employees that I have taken on a mentor role. And I think mentors need to be a truly good mentor. You can't have those constraints. And what I mean by constraints is that reporting relationship, that quote unquote disciplinary relationship. That's why I say parents can't be friends. There has to be that delineation, whether how fine it is, but there has to be the delineation. I have, and the former employees, they understand in that, I can have very strong conversations with them, but they understand that there's not that threat of termination or anything else, right? Now, as a boss, you can be a tremendous coach. You can absolutely identify potential. You can feed that potential, and great leaders wear many hats. You just got to be very careful, right? Because when you develop that mentor relationship, it does involve other emotions necessarily that are not there in the coaching and the boss world. So
Like
when you
ego or desirable outcomes, or like there's these expectations that I think can blur that
right,
relationship.
and you have to be careful on that. So as a great leader, be a great coach, be a great supporter, be an unlocker of potential, be a developer, invest in your people. And there are some leaders that have those great conversations, and I have in the past, but I'm always that, in the back of the mind, the Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder going, just be careful, because you might be setting expectations that in your current role you may or may not be able to meet. I don't want to discourage any leader from identifying and investing in potential, but when that person grows and beyond your capability of what position you have for them, and then they're in another industry or another job, absolutely be their mentor and be there to constantly support them growing forward. But, I think I touched on in the book, there are rules for being a good mentor. There are guidelines that you need to follow. And there are lines that you can absolutely cross. And like you said, if you want to be the hero, don't be a mentor. If you want to be going in and you have this hero complex and you want to save everybody and you want to make decisions for them and tell them what you would do, you don't necessarily want to be a mentor. In times as being that leader, those are things that are big questions that you need to ask yourself.
When does that mentor, like, you talked about in the book that type of traditional mentorship as one form of mentorship, like the newcomer on the block and you have the experience and there's that separation. What was interesting to me too was the section on the peer-to-peer mentorship. How can you ensure that, from your perspective, that peer-to-peer mentorship doesn't turn into competition or ego wrestling? And like, what actively are you doing, or would you recommend people to do to prevent the ugly side of what that could potentially turn into if not done right?
So I've talked to companies about this too that want to start mentoring programs and that don't necessarily do very well with them. And I tell people mentoring and mentorship is a scary word because it has all these emotional connotations to it. And that potentially turns people off, that potentially prevents people from entering those relationships because they're unsure of what that means and don't invest in it because there's fear. You can't flip a switch and somebody's a mentor and somebody's not a mentor. It is something that sometimes it's instantaneous, where that rapport and that organicness of that relationship is created. Other times it takes time. The gentleman that I wrote about in the book, Aaron, I mean, we were good friends, we were colleagues, but our relationship has turned into very much of a peer mentorship. He's got, he had 30 years at Disney, I had 10, but yet we still talk every week and we share about what's going on in our lives and we bounce ideas off each other. I mean, it's fantastic. In the moment, you don't necessarily see it. I saw him as this giant figure that knew everything,
Right.
but he saw me as a peer, right? Which is a kind of an eye opening for me. But going back to that concept that, that relationship has to be there first before you can tack on the concept
Right.
of mentor. So I have a college friend that we've kind of got a peer mentoring ship right now. But when I first met him, I hated him.
Really?
I thought he was a complete jerk. And over the years, we've developed great friendships and our families are close, and you never know too. So if you're open to those types of things, and again, not be afraid of where those relationships develop, you'll be okay. Could have still hated him and he thought he was a jerk, but no, we got beyond that. So it's how mature that person is to be able to be open to those potential relationships. Because if you think the other person's competitive, well, it just means you're competitive too.
It's a
And
reflection, right? It's a mirror of what you actually need to
wow,
work
great
on.
point.
And
That was
I was reading this book because I'm going to interview you, but I actually need it right now. So I was thinking about that for myself because I was noticing, like, not even just in mentorship, but as somebody who's pretty competitive in nature, I look at other people and what they're doing and what they're saying and their opportunities, and I get this little like nasty like green feeling in my chest, like, oh, like, why do they get to that? And it wasn't until I like started working on it in therapy that I realized like what other people are doing, and when that feeling happens, it's just what I want to be doing, and it should be either a way of understanding an area that I should be growing in, or maybe just like a conversation that you need to happen. And the art of conversation should be a whole like side book that you write. I feel like maybe you're already writing it. I
You
don't
might have to
know.
write the forward. That was a great insight that you had.
I appreciate that, because truly the way that you go about feeling confident enough to even have these conversations is hard now. Let's give a couple examples, both mentee and mentor. For the mentor, like when you're getting frustrated, how should you process the frustration of whatever process you're going through with your mentee in a healthy way that doesn't actually compromise the relationship because of that trust? Like, you don't want to be venting, but you need to, like, how do you process that? What are healthy ways to do that, whether it's in conversation or in another method?
So, great question. And I always say that the worst part about mentorship is the disappointment.
Mm,
And that's because, you never stop being a mentor, and you will always be there for that person. But when that pendulum slides way below that 50% mark, you realize that your effectiveness is not working, and you will always be there if they ever pick up the phone. And there's no end date to mentorship in my mind. And you have to be patient, because then you think about your life. And I love what you were talking about, where you just kind of do that introspection. There were times I didn't listen to a darn thing,
yeah.
and that I did my own thing, right? And it wasn't until you had the veil of wisdom pulled back and you can actually see the benefits in this, hopefully the things you learn from that. And you just have to step back, kind of like tough love. You just have to say, okay, you do your thing. Rafiki was the tough love until it got to a
Right.
point where he had to beat Simba on top of the head, right? And,
Yeah.
and he let him do his thing. You let him make mistakes. He let him go in that direction. And you have to do that. And again, that's that fine line where you have a genuine interest in seeing this person be the best they can be. And sometimes that might take time.
What are the most
And
powerful like questions that
yeah,
the mentor can use, like from like a tactical standpoint? Like if someone's listening and they're like, I need to be able to ask an open-ended question that helps that person go on that journey. What couple of examples would you provide?
so great question. And I thought I had the answer until a student turned in their assignment the other day, which we were doing a personal kind of assessment type work. And she's an incredibly bright student. And she said, well, I never really, and she's probably what, 21,
Yeah.
around that age, a junior in college. And she says, I never really thought about I needed self-reflection. That was kind of new for me, that I never really considered that. When you're coming at it from the scope of life that I've had at 55, I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what the self-reflection? But maybe one of these rabbit holes that we've been talking about is this young person said, I never needed it. I never
Mm.
needed self-reflection before, because they're skating through life under whatever umbrella they're skating through right now. And they maybe haven't jumped off the cliff of reality and lived, right? So how do I respond back to that student? I think a couple questions might help. Where do you want to go? If you were a new employee with me, Rita, I would say, what do you want to be and how can I help you get there? I think that's a good question. I think how much, I hate to go there, but it's almost a quantity. How much do you care about where you want to be at this point? If you want to go through life and be a musician and work part-time jobs, good for you. How can I help you get gigs? How can I teach you a song on a guitar? But if they're looking for something that they're not getting, then maybe it's a part of them that they haven't unlocked yet. And that's where I said, hey, let's talk. Let me help you figure out what that is to get there. But you have to figure out the key that unlocks that door. And it's different for every door that you're walking
Right.
into.
Like for every person, it's different, as you said. But I think for me, as I read your book, what I realized is it's not so much telling somebody or
Oh,
giving
yeah.
somebody advice. It's just more so going into that kind of philosophical, like multiple questions to get to the heart of what that person truly needs. And I think it was really cool how you even traced the mentorship back to ancient societies where like because like this isn't just like business advice, like people have needed, like we've been lost since whoever and whatever put us on this big rock that we call earth. So why do you think mentorship is more important now than ever. Like if someone is just like going through life, they're skating, they're not thinking about the reflection. They're like, I have a therapist and I have a mom. Why do I need a mentor? I have Google, I have ChatGPT. Like, why like get to the heart of why is mentorship so important now more than ever?
So great question, and I have multiple answers for that. I'll
Let's do
tell you
it.
one of the reasons why I wrote the book was because I do fear for mentorship, and a lot of that has to do with the sensitivity that everybody has been picked up on. And you've got individuals that are afraid to put themselves in situations where they're going to be told they're not doing the right thing. We also have an experienced generation that are fearful of sharing knowledge because they don't know how it's going to be received. When the words boomer is now a negative, when at one point that represented somebody that had a lot of knowledge and experience that you could learn from, now it's something that you want to avoid and make fun of.
Mhm.
And there's communication gaps, right? The experienced generation don't necessarily want to do something by text. Younger generation, I'm using big generalization,
Yeah.
but don't want to have those face-to-face conversations because it can get uncomfortable. And what that does is it rips at the fabric of what mentorship does. And with all those rabbit holes we talked about, I think it's very necessary that we excuse me, reach in and we have people that can reach in and pull those folks out.
We need the signs in Alice in Wonderland. We need signs of like, go this way, do that way. Like,
We do.
you know, because you're going to end up at a mad tea party in your head where you're stuck and you can't get out. If we don't have signs, then we're truly lost. Don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just passionately agreeing with the fact that if we don't have people stepping in and guiding ourselves for success, we don't know if we'll ever find it. But more importantly, we're ripping at the fabric of human relationship too. And something that I love about the Disney experience that you had and a lot of the leaders that I've interviewed is,
Can I jump
yes,
in real
go
quick? I
ahead.
want to
Yes,
add one
please.
thing. I'm going to
Yes.
open a whole other can of worms.
Open the worms. Let's open the worms.
AI. You mentioned
Yes.
AI. And if you spend any time in AI, it will tell you you're the most brilliant person in the world.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Even if I tell the thing not to tell me I'm the most brilliant person in the world and challenge me, it will still tell me. And these algorithms will give you what you can ask any question and it's going to give you an answer. But it's going to give you an answer because it was told to in ones and zeros.
Mm.
A mentor will tell you maybe not what you want to hear, but what you need to hear because they care about you and they want to invest in you, not because of some automatic algorithm going to spit out some nonsense back to you. And that is the piece that we can't lose. That right there. AI doesn't care about you. A mentor deeply cares about you. So I'm sorry to
No, don't apologize because I want to hone in on that. That's where I was also thinking about the reflection piece because AI also will simply mirror what you've told it. My Alexa is popping off right now because she thinks I'm talking to her and I wasn't. Does she care that I'm doing an episode? No, she doesn't deeply care that I'm doing a podcast episode. There are some things that these robots cannot simply understand. And I think that if we're losing the ability to have conversation, to feel brave enough to be vulnerable, to go to somebody and talk to somebody, then we're going to create this rift that will continue to expand. And in addition to that, the lack of experience can make those AI conversations even worse because you only know what you know. And I love that at Disney, like that you were exposed to a lot of diversity of not only just people, but different cultures and different ways of thinking. And maybe you traveled a little bit at some point, and that also broadens your perspective as well. And I think that it's so important to remind people to get out of those rabbit holes and get into the world and talk to people. Because for me, when I have traveled, that's when I've also learned the most about myself too.
Amen.
I just wanted to underline what you said was super important, and I could have like 80,000 podcasts with you because it's so exciting to talk about. But I wanted to start wrapping up the episode with one of my favorite stories so far that I wanted you to paraphrase for us. It was the section about the master gardener parable. I think it captures the heart of truly what we're trying to talk about for mentorship, but at least this part of the episode too. Can you briefly like tell us the story or paraphrase it for us?
Sure. It's about a guy that wants to be a master gardener, and he understands that there's this wise bearded person or whatever that lives up the hill, and they're going to go talk to the guru of gardening. And he says, give me all the secrets there is to being a master gardener. And the gardener, this master, hands him a seed and said, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And he goes, well, plant it and let it grow into the plant. And so the guy goes down and plants this seed and nurtures it and takes care of it and creates a dynamic around it that it allows it to flourish. And he learns from then. He's taking notes and he becomes a master gardener, and he goes back up to thank the guy. And he's like, all I did was give you a seed. You did everything. And I think that is the perfect definition of a mentor is, and again, I go back to that happiness is planting the seed. It is not about telling them what to do. It's about giving them a situation where they can take something, nurture it, build upon it, and you're there to guide them. But if you tell them what to do, they're not learning anything about that, right?
Mhm.
It's you trust that the mentee is going to find their own your way, and they're there to kind of nurture around them. So while the guy was planting a seed of the physical seed, the mentor was planting the metaphorical mentorship seed in that young man.
It's not about mentorship, isn't about control. It's not about giving you the playbook. It's not about making you feel bad about yourself. It's not about keeping score. It's not about ego. From what I'm understanding, it's truly about cultivation of that self-growth experience that two people get to share together. And there has to be a benefit for both for it to be a successful mentorship. What are your thoughts on
100%.
that?
Way to summarize that. Absolutely.
All right. It's almost like I was reading the book that you wrote for. Well, okay. So we're going to do a part 2 on this because there's way more that I want to dive into. But to wrap up this episode, we're going to do a rapid fire hot take segment on Disney characters. So
Bring it.
are you down for that? Are you ready?
Bring it.
All right.
Come on, everybody. Here we go.
Hot take,
That's awesome.
Yogi. Thank you. I'm cheesy because I like Disney. I'm glad that you feel that way too, because that would be awkward if it wasn't. So, hot take. Was Jiminy Cricket a good mentor? Was he a mentor at all? Yes or no?
He was okay. He's the conscience, but I think he was too squishy. I don't think he planned enough, and he was more. Pinocchio was wooden. He didn't have much of a brain at that time, and I think he was the brain, and maybe inserted himself too much in that.
Good hot take. So in that scenario, mentee wasn't fully formed, maybe even ready to go on that growth journey. Okay. Was Phil from Hercules? What is he? Is he like a centaur? What is the little man? What is he? I don't know what he is.
He's a puck. What do they call those? The half goat.
We're losing the plot. So was Phil actually a great mentor, even though he was rough?
Yes, but I'm going to set him aside because he also had a growth journey as well. And one of the things that if mentors feel they have too much to not enough to learn anymore, they've learned all they can, then well, they're not going to be a good mentor either. They need to be able to grow well. And I think Phil, in his experience with Hercules, also grew and also learned something about himself. And he was a changed person at the end of that as well.
Peer-to-peer, maybe mentorship? No, it's a gray area.
Gray area.
We'll let
Gray
the fates decide from that
Yes.
movie. Okay. All right. So was Rafiki's slap the moment Simba actually needed? Was he a good mentor? Yes or no?
I think Rafiki, yes. I think Rafiki was a great mentor. I think the slap was important because the pride was about ready to collapse. So he had to, if he had his druthers, he would allow Simba to get there on his own, but he needed to save the pride and the pride lands. And so that's why he kind of quickened that along by that more proverbial slap.
Get out of that Hakuna Matata state, bro. We got stuff to do. Let's go. Chop, chop. Okay, love it. Okay, now this is my favorite question.
Okay.
If you could mentor any Disney character, who do you think you could, who would it be and why? We can tease more on it in part 2 if you want to do that.
Save that. I thought you were going to ask me if I had any other mentors that were not in that list.
Okay, well, maybe, yeah. So
right.
who's
that
on?
one? There's Merlin from Sword in the Stone, who instead of teaching, put Wart in scenarios where he had to learn himself, right? Versus instruction. And then we've got the peer mentorship of Bagheera and Baloo and some other characters where,
Yeah.
you know, you even talk Cogsworth and Lumiere and the Beast, that it definitely different personalities, but working together created a scenario where that the main character was successful on that. How's that?
That is awesome. I think that's I didn't even think about it. I would say my favorite mentor, now that we're talking, I think Sebastian had it from The Little Mermaid, had a tall
Teenagers, you give
order.
them an inch, they swim all over you.
Yes, exactly. That was really good. I want to cackle, but I won't ruin our listeners' listening experience. Yogi, this is so fun. Thank you for being on the show. When we do part 2, we're absolutely going to dive in more, but I just wanted to end on this note that I wrote here. You wrote that mentorship isn't a hug. It's not a title. It's not control. It's not about who's better than anybody. I think it's purely about belief. It's about seeing who you could be before you saw it for yourself. Asking better questions instead of giving answers, and resisting the urge to rescue. And I agree, maybe the truth is failure isn't there to discourage our success. It's trusting that struggle that comes from failure will hopefully encourage it. So my greatest takeaway from this episode is this: the best mentors don't create followers, they create independent thinkers. So I'll leave you with this listener question. The question isn't just who is mentoring you, it's who are you cultivating along the way. So that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much, Yogi.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a magical time, Rita.
All right, well then let's cue the magical outro.
You've been listening to Bippity Boppity Business. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple, or listen to us anywhere you prefer listening to your podcast. Until next time, have a magical day.